Hello, regular knife people, to another episode of the Regular Guys Knife Channel Show. A little bit longer than I had intended since the last video. I apologize. Like I said, working a new set of shifts, new days off. It's you know, yeah, the real life catches up, right? So you got the title, so you know this isn't a Rat 2 video. I had reordered the scale material, and I still had some hardware on order, and I guess kind of in my head, or at least getting this thing out, into some kind of realistic time frame here. Um, Whichever got here first was how I was going to proceed. The hardware got here first, so I'm going to piece together what little footage I got on the scales. Maybe do a bit of an explanation over some of my processes, and then I'll just put that in with the hardware. And this will end up being a two movie or two video series. Kind of like how Aliens should have been. I'll give you a quick sneak peek here, just to catch you up on where I'm at. But I've got the scales; they're done. I got the backspacer; it's done. They've only been sanded to a thousand grit. I think I'm going to take it down to maybe 3,000. I'd like him to have a bit of a shine, kind of like how Pena does on his custom knives, but it's on the smaller side of EDC, and so it's not, you don't really need all that grip from a rough G10, and I kind of like the look of that shiny polished G10. So it is a black and green linen micarta over some orange G10 liners with an orange G10 backspacer. So yeah, so that's where we're at. It's not abandoned. I didn't forget. You can kind of see there side by side the difference in where this project's going. But I will have this done in the next week. We will have a video out. Whether I get that video out before or after the Blade Show weekend, I don't know. But I've got a whole week's vacation coming up, so we'll get them videos all caught up and done. I'll probably color the stainless steel hardware, straw color it, do maybe flame, maybe I'll flame the pocket clip, maybe I'll anodize it. I'll see how I'm feeling. Maybe I'll use that as an introduction to titanium anodizing lead in, and yeah, we'll get that done. So the Blade Show's this weekend, Blade Show West. We're leaving early Thursday night because I got the VIP tickets for Friday. We get in early, so I'm going to be there bright and early to get in and make my dash to the table and see if they've got the knife that I want best. But in the interim, we got another video here, and this is a knife video, not not the Rat, but this is a video, for a knife I acquired. Right, I was really trying. I was trying really hard, right, to save my money, save my knife money for the Blade Show. That I'd even handed over my savings to the check writer in charge, and then Southern Edge just had to go and screw all that up. So yeah, we ended up with a new knife. Um, this is not a knife that I'd ever foreseen owning. Extremely happy with Hinderer's XM18s. I've carried these for years. I think the Gen 6 tri-way pivots are by far the best version of this knife. You can get them on occasion, at factory price, which is $425. I think they're a smoking deal. I love the XM18. Okay, and I never contemplating owning this guy, the Eclipse. To me, in just photographs, it's not a particularly attractive knife to me, or at least the scales aren't. And so, I like my XM18s. I own a couple of them. I love them. I thought I was pretty much, done, barring a XM18 Sponto buy that I can, a drop that I can get in. I kind of thought, I kind of liked where I was at and where my collection was at, Hinderer wise. A couple of weeks ago, Southern Edges had a drop. They had some Maximuses, I believe, and some Eclipses. I didn't get into it. I used the excuse there were some color combinations I didn't like, and I just didn't get into it. And yeah, I started handing over the blade show money to the wifey in charge. And then this guy dropped. Their latest drop. These are a Southern Edges exclusive. They are a buoy blade Eclipse, and it's not just an Eclipse. Okay, this is a tri-way Eclipse. I'm not 100% sure because I'm not a Hinderer historian, but I know he hasn't done buoys in almost forever on the Eclipse, and I don't know how common uh, tri-way eclipses are at the moment. I haven't seen them before. The last drop that I saw of the eclipse was not a tri-way pivoted eclipse. So there was that. Okay. And then they had an FDE battle bronze. I don't for anybody that has anodized their own titanium, you know how difficult a solid, you know, this color is to get, right? This is, I don't they call it battle bronze. I've always thought it was a dark gray, but it is, or with a bit of brown in it. I always just thought that this is a very difficult color finish, to achieve on titanium. And then with a factory FDE G10 scale, yeah. So I'll have to set my sights a little bit lower, come Blade Show, come the Blade Show, because I had to dip into the savings for this guy, because that's, whatever. I thought if nothing else, I would be able to trade this guy off. I don't particularly care for that clipped point, a buoy shape. It's generally not my cup of tea. But ergonomically, this is by far this it's head and shoulders above the XM18s. The XM18s have got good ergonomics, but it's a locked grip, right? You are dedicated to the grip that you have, and you are locked into it. The best that you can do to modify your grip, right? You're not moving from it. The best that you can do to get out of that grip, right, is choking up on a choil, right? And that is really it. I mean, moving your hands up and down are not the most comfortable functions on this guy, right? The XM18, I believe, in my opinion, it was designed to be locked in, right? So that you had that dude in a GI Joe kung fu grip. It was not coming out, and you could do all the cutting and hacking and slashing you needed to, whilst also maintaining, the most positive grip possible, right? That is the XM18, right? There's none of that in the Eclipse, right? It is choose your own adventure. There are so many different ways for you to put a hand on this handle, on this scale style, it's easier to adjust your grip for the task. I'll say it that way, right? And it's comfortable in 90 different holding styles, grasping styles, right? It's just a much more liberal and nimble grip. It takes less effort and less time to get a good, a good enough positive grip on this knife than the XM18 does, right? It has a natural. You naturally want to place your thumb on top of it for more control. It is just a very well designed, ergonomic knife, and I didn't expect that, right? Because it's ugly. it's not. It is not the most attractive, and pleasing shape of a knife out there, but it works, right? It works, and then you couple that with the colors and I know I've said that the XM18 is like the one knife to rule them all. It is the iconic Hinderer, right? If you're going to own a Hinderer, it should be an XM18 because that is the Hinderer. But if I'm buying that Hinderer with the thoughts of carrying it and it being my EDC and it's the Eclipse is the knife, right? And it's kind of sad to say because, in my last video, I had already made the ruling that I'd already decided that I had purchased the last EDC specific knife that I would be purchasing, and it's just not the case. Yeah. For 9-ish millimeters more in closed length, I'm getting another half an inch of blade again. I'm getting a much more ergonomic knife. I'm getting, yeah. I mean, is there ever a situation in which I envision myself that I will actually, test out the strength of this knife? No, God, no. Cutting, the most arduous task that my knives are generally called into use for, like, cutting the tag off my wife's bra strap. That's not pretty much any knife will excel at that, right? With the exception of a broadsword or something. But this it carries nicer. It has a much smaller kind of pocket profile, if you were. It is a thinner, a knife. There's, if you are righty and this guy here is tucked into your pocket, there's no exposed jimping for you to scrape your hand against while you're reaching into your pocket for your keys or your chapstick, right? I mean, it's got the flipper tab, but the flipper tab being kind of set down and guarded, by the scale, your hand just kind of skates over it instead of digging into it like it does on the XM18s. So just as a purely EDC for EDC's sake, it pains me to say it, but the Eclipse is a much far superior knife. You know, as as far as that goes, if it sounded like a bombshell to you, it felt like a bombshell in my head. To admit it, but this is the one. Barring Hinderer coming out with another amazing knife here in the next 2 years, and me pronouncing that one being the one, but these guys, as far as I know right now, are still available at southernedges.com. I'll try to put a link in the description, of where they're at. But as far as I know, these guys are still available, in some color combinations, and they do have some anodized ones. I know there were some battle blue and some blue ones. I don't remember exactly what the scale color was, but if you looked into Hinderers, you already know you don't buy them for the scale color, right? Because that's as easily changeable as a pair of underwear, right? We just, you can mix and match and do whatever you want. So there's my thoughts on how it stacks up against its cousins here. So we'll get into it a little bit. I'll pull it apart and we'll talk about it, and I'll talk about various parts. I've done all the measuring, man, and it's got the same damn length blade, and the scales are pretty much the same length, and they weigh pretty much the same as the XM18. I'm not going over all those again, but that's not changing, much. If the Eclipse is lighter, it's you're by a short and curly. I mean, you're not going to notice the weight difference. So I'll set these two guys aside here, and we'll dig into it a little bit, because you know not being able to help myself, and kind of, I guess, the one thing that pushed me over the top was that DLT trading had a Battle Bronze Eclipse hardware set available, and I can't help myself. The monkey is heavy, right? So I ordered this knife, fully intending to get the hardware set. I just got the hardware set in, and so we can do a little bit of disassembly, and we'll take a look at the inner workings of the knife, because I don't know why, but they're not any. I've already replaced the bearings with a set of skiffs, and it's put together almost nearly exactly as the XM18, with an interesting change, that I'm kind of on the fence about, but I also kind of like. So we'll talk about that. And the big difference in construction on these is really it's the hardware. They are a T6 hardware. And in my opinion, and most people who take apart their knives' opinion is T6 sucks. But this is when we pull these out, you'll see the difference. So we'll start out here with the pivot. We'll get that pivot screw out. We watch my other Hinderer video if you want to see all the different ways that you can get one of these things apart. There's Hinderer's factory, armorer's tool, which save your $80, but big flatheads, coins. There's 100 things. It's a big flathead screw. Very rarely do you actually need one of the spanners for the opposite side. You can generally, just with finger pressure, hold it in place. You really do not have to torque down on the pivots on these knives to get a solid action. So usually it's pretty easy to get those pivots apart. So we are going to go here, and like I said, this is all T6 hardware, not the T8 righty, but that is T6 with a difference, right? That is a big, chunky screw, right, with a good, solid, tight T6 head on it. There's very little slop in that, so you're not going to strip it out. Hinderer does not Loctite its knives or any of the parts. It relies on the precision manufacturing of those parts to hold them together. So they don't Loctite anything. So you really shouldn't be putting a whole bunch of pressure on this hardware in the first place to assemble or disassemble it. So really, T6 should be a wash. So, but it is T6. So take that into consideration. The other thing that they've done is instead of going with that sex bolt kind of setup like they had on the XM18s, they went with threaded center spacers with screws going through on both sides of it. So a much more common way to put a knife together. Quite a few knives, the rat too, is put together that way. A much more normal way to put a knife together. But of course, it's a Hinderer, and they make all their hardware in house, and so it's a more common way to do it. But then again, it's not common. So we got our G10 Hinderer marked scale, an FDE, which is an awesome match for that Battle Bronze. We got the inner titanium liner. We got this one does have a floating stop pin, which is kind of weird, you know, kind of again different from the XM18s, which has that stop pin, you know, blade stop pin pressed in there, so it can't be removed. Here it is removable on the Eclipse. This guy has been carried for about a week now, so it is full of stuff. I will endeavor to clean it off here a bit, so I don't get it on my new mat here. The gray one kicked the bucket when I was using a punch and punching some holes through some things and made some nice big holes in my gray mat. So I ordered this new guy here. Maybe olive green might look cleaner for you know, for longer, but you know, we'll see. So yeah, not the stock bearings. These are my skiffs. You know, there we can see the marks for the Triway. You know, we got the little Triway logo there, and this one is in CPM 20 CB. You know, which you know, if you've read up on blade steels at all, you know that is the American, you know, copy of the Bowler M390. That's the Crucibles version. You know, barring just a few little tiny differences, that's Crucible's version of the Bowler's M390 steel. So not anything new or exciting, you know, on that front. My other two Hinderers are an M390. One of these days, I would hope to get one in the S45V, but that knife steel doesn't seem to be taking off quite as much as the 35 did. So I don't know. You know, we'll see. But there's the inside of the spring side, the titanium side here of the scale. Let me get some of the pocket lint off there for you. You know, so nothing really drastically, you know, same lock face insert, same detent ball, very very similar to the XM18. So with, like I said, with the difference being the center spacers are actually threaded and have screws that come in from both sides instead of the kind of the sex bolt arrangement that the XM18s have. Same cheap as shit, you know, Phillips headed pocket clip screws. You know, please, if you own one of these knives and you're going to upgrade the pocket clip hardware, do us all a favor and don't buy the Hinderers bullshit. $20 for two T6 screws, titanium screws, is absolute highway robbery. Get it on Etsy, get it for a quarter of the price, and don't feed in this notion that there is a market for a $10, you know, T6 pocket clip screw. That's ludicrous. Alright, so we got them guys out of here. I have ordered upgraded pocket clip screws. They just haven't got here yet, so we'll break out the Phillips here. Incidentally, this is the Phillips that comes with the Hinderer Armorer's tool. I just took it out and replaced it with a T6 bit. So take the pocket clip off here so we can get at the blade stop. Or the lock bar stop, or whatever the hell you want to call it here. The little stop disc. This guy, which I think is a T6. This is T6. So in the Hinderer hardware kits, it's the same for the Eclipse as it is for the XM18s. You get essentially every screw, a titanium replacement for every screw on this knife, with the exception of the filler tab, the pocket clip, and the stop disc. You get a screw for that, but it's the same stainless steel screw that was in there. Everything else, with the exception of the pivot, will be replaced with a piece of titanium hardware. That's what you get with the kits. So we've got the pivot screw, the center spacers, the stop disc, and then the 6 body screws. All right. So XM18, same thing, except you get 3 sex bolts and 3 center spacers. You get the stop disc. All those are generally the same. But for some weird ass reason, you don't get titanium pocket clip screws. Okay, you get some stainless steel Phillips headed, computer screws, whatever the hell they are. They stink. The fact that I gotta have 3 different pieces of hardware to take my knife apart kind of blows. Okay, so Hinderer, please, for the 7 gens, right? Just give us some goddamn, T6 pocket clip hardware, for crying out loud, right? And end this, end this now, okay? But yeah, so that's kind of my rant. All right, but I have some coming. Unfortunately, it seems like the cheapest, bestest company for getting it is from in fucking Canada, and so you're gonna wait on the Canadian Post. This time of year, without there being any snow in the streets, it's the sled dog teams are a bit slower, so just realize that it's gonna take a bit longer to get anything from Canada, but it is what it is, because I'm not paying $20 for 2 screws. That's ridiculous. So yeah, there's another big difference on this knife than the XM18, and I'll point that out after we're done replacing the screws and we're wrapping this up at the end. So we'll start getting this knife put back together. We're replacing all the stainless hardware with one of Hinderer's titanium kits, hardware kits. So we'll just start opening stuff up. So here we've got the lock bar over travel stop and screw. Oh, it's a bit golder, but it's battle bronze. We've got the 6 body screws. The 3 center spacers. And the pivot screw. Guess we'll start here with the blade stop. We don't really have to worry about the taking the pocket clip off anymore, to make it easier to put them together like we do with the XM18s. Because now the center spacers are, they're screwed on from the opposite sides. They're not falling out like the old sex bolts do. So I do feel like, assembly, disassembly of this knife is a little bit easier. So I don't generally Loctite anything on my knives. I generally don't use Loctite all that often, but I'm going to here on the over travel stop, just because that's not a piece of hardware that's going to come off, or be removed from the knife all that often. So, and it has a tiny little screw with just a couple of threads. So just to be on the safe side, we'll use just a smidge of Loctite on there, or this stuff, Permatex. It's not Loctite, but it's blue Loctite. Okay, we'll get that disc on at some point. That's, and one thing that you can be assured of, boy, is just a precision fit of everything, on a Hinder. I know Chris Reeves are the precision knife, but having owned both, and having owned a few iterations of both, there is no detectable difference, at least in the feel of the precision of a Hinderer from, as opposed to a Chris Reeve. Hinderers are just as nice and just as precise. And if there is any looseness in the tolerances, I think they're in the correct parts. And I find that assembly and disassembly of Hinderers to be a hell of a lot easier and more enjoyable than the Chris Reeves. Get this clip put back on. With the Phillips head. Couldn't tell you what number one, number two, whatever it is. It's a smaller Phillips. Get the clip put back on. You can see the contrast there with the over travel stop. Not necessarily the same color, but I do like the colors. So I'm gonna put 3 center spacers on. We'll make a final judgment call on whether or not we like the color on these when we get the whole knife put back together. And we can put our 3 body screws in. Yeah, these knives they're just they are a joy to assemble and disassemble. Everything just fits so well. You don't have to put a bunch of pressure on it. You don't have to tighten it too tight. Everything just fits perfect. It is a very well made, precision made, tool. Now again, I just do these titanium kits. Because one, I'm sick, and two, because it's aesthetics, right? I mean, realistically, for strength and longevity, um, the stainless steel hardware should be what I stuck with. But I do these just because I like the look of the titanium hardware. There's no other good reason whatsoever to change it out. I mean, you're not saving any appreciable amount of weight. You're not increasing the performance of that knife in any appreciable manner by going to the titanium. I just do it because I like the look. So it's a sickness. Put a couple little dabs of my Liberty 100% synthetic bearing lube, which you can get a lifetime supply for half the cost of one of them tiny little bottles of KPL. I like it. I think on flipper knives that have a much more kinetic, style of opening, I find that this stuff works a lot better than the standard KPL. All right, so put the first bearing in. We're looking for which side of the balls look better or bigger, and we want to have those facing towards the inside of the knife, towards the blade itself. We can put the blade on. Alright. So I've seen before where people like to lock the blade open at this point with using the lock bar. The problem is that pressure can kind of shift your pivot over at an angle, and I wouldn't want to do anything that damages the lock face. And you see where the lock bar travels really far up the blade and has to be forced out. No. You can set it up at this point, and then just using hand pressure push the blade down, to reassemble it. Probably ought to get the stop pin in. now, if we do our part, put a little bit of oil on here. A little bit here on the blade. Blade side. Now we can hold the blade down and we can get the titanium liner put in here. And that's it. Snaps right together. Keeping some constant pressure. We'll get the scale on. Run the screws and we'll see all the titanium. This one, out of my 3 Hinderers, the screw is a bit tighter of a fit on this one. But I see on the titanium it's a little bit more. Nope, it's starting to get tight. So there's either some gunk on the inside of the pivot, you know, or you know, maybe a burr left over from machining. I don't know, but it still fits fairly well. Here, we're not going to use a screw. We'll use my favorite Hinderer tool, which is my silver mercury dime. I'll run that in tight. This knife, like all Hinderers, you don't need to get that pivot loose in order to get a smooth action. This guy, you can run it down tight and solid, and the action is just the same. Nice. Hinderers have a little bit of break-in period, very, very little, and they end up running nice and smooth. So we'll run these screws in. I apologize for any dog barking in the background. We're too deep in this video now for me to stop it, but I think the check writer in charge is home from her food procurement expedition, so the dogs may vocalize. At least my daughter's, snibbly little lapdog will, anyways. Yeah, nothing. They never want to. The screws never want to cross thread, man. They always just straighten out and go right in. I mean, that's just it's a artifact of the construction of these. That's it, man. We are done. Let's check the action. Oof. Get just a little bit tighter. Yeah. I mean, that's... Oh, is it? No. I'm stopping it. Alright. That's me putting my finger on the pocket clip. Yeah, that's it. This is the Eclipse, man. The Hinderer Eclipse. This is... If you're going to own, if you want a Hinderer to be your everyday carry, then this is the knife. Yeah, I like that. I like that titanium. As it sits in my pocket, I get more finger oils and gunk on it and rub it a bit. Then the color is going to come down a little bit and be a little bit more closer than the rest of the knife. So I'm not too worried about it. I do like that. I do think that hardware looks good. Maybe not a perfect match, but pivot screw looks good. Yeah, it's worth $120. That's kind of up to you. I like it. I feel like it adds a lot to the knife. So, I'm gonna spend the money. But yeah, that is the Hinderer Eclipse. I'm not 100% sure what gen it is. I think it technically is like a gen maybe 4. You can calm down there and tell me what kind of an asshole I am, and correct me, what gen this is. But I believe this is the 4th gen of the Eclipse, and it is a tri-way. Not a bushing knife. It runs on bearings. I do swap out all of my Hinderer bearings for the skiffs. I pretty much swap out any bearing I've got for skiffs. If skiff has a bearing available, they're a solid bronze cage, not a stamped metal. Ceramic balls. Generally, the balls are a little bit larger than the bearings that they're replacing. So hopefully bigger means better. Um, at least that's what I've heard. But it does. I do feel like on most knives there's not much of an action improvement. And then there's some knives with terrible actions that the bearings just don't make any difference at all. I do feel there's a slight difference in the action or the feel of the action on the Hinderers, but not as much as some other knives that I've experienced. The bearings are, I do feel like the bearings, the grade of bearings, or maybe the supplier of the bearings has changed from when the Gen 6s first started coming out. I don't feel like they're as nice now as they were. But again, it's one of those things. You spent $425 on a knife. What's $15 for a set of bearings, right? And if nothing else, it keeps those bearings in a pristine condition for whoever you pass your knife on to, or resell it, to down the line. So yeah, they do always get swapped out with skiffs. But yeah, that pretty much exhausts the topic here of the Hinderer Eclipse. That's Eclipse with a K. But it is, yeah, it is a great knife, and this is a knife that I would have rushed over to purchase, at the Blade Show. So I don't really feel bad spending my Blade Show money on it. But there's so yeah. But like I said, yeah, maybe by the end of this week, I will have another video. It'll either just be the Blade Show video first, and the rat, or I'll have the rat done. I just, I'm gonna, like I said, I'll take what little footage I have of the of the making of the scales. I'll wrap that up into the video of the hardware, and then I'll get that released. We're pretty close to the end there, and then we can, put a fork in it, and it's done, and then just move on to something else. I'm thinking maybe doing making a knife from a kit, or maybe we'll make our own knife. I'll grind down we'll make a knife, a karambit or something out of an old file or something. I don't know, but we'll get that done, and we'll move on. And I'm sure there'll be more knife acquisitions and stuff, along the way. But yeah. So look for my next video. Even if it's just the Rat 2 video, there'll be a little bit in there of the Blade Show, if that one comes first, and yeah. So I hope to be seeing you again, talking to you again here in about a week. And this is the Regular Guy on the Regular Guy's Knife Channel show, and I wish you all a good night.